Hey guys, I'm John Setzler. Welcome back to Man Cave Meals. I frequently get asked about knives. People ask me, what kind of knives should I buy? What do you like? And how do you take care of them? So I'm going to put a little video together to talk about those things. So let's get started. I'd like to start this process out by talking about what kind of knives you should buy, or what types of knives you should buy. One of the most frequent questions I hear is, I want to buy a set of knives. What should I get? And my recommendation typically is to avoid buying a set and just buy the specific knives you need. If you want to buy a set, feel free. My opinion on most sets are, in most cases, there's quite a few things in that set that you don't need and that you'll never use. When I reach for a knife, I reach for one of these three types of knives most of the time. These three knives cover about 95% of everything you're going to do in the kitchen. You've got your 8-inch chef knife. This is the go-to knife. This type of knife is going to do most of the work in your kitchen. The second most frequent knife that I use is the 4-inch paring knife. That one gets a lot of action also. And the third knife, it probably gets equal action, I'm going to say, with this. This is a 6-inch boning / filet knife, and this has a nice flexible blade on it. This knife also doubles beautifully as a utility knife. If I want to just cut something, general purpose, that I don't want to use the chef's knife for, this is the type of knife I go for. These three knives, like I said, cover 90 to 95% of everything I'm gonna do. I also always like to recommend buying quality knives. When I first decided that I wanted quality knives, these three knives right here are the first three knives that I bought. These are the three that I used to help me figure out what it was I wanted and how I wanted to use knives. This is a Zwilling Pro made by Henckels. This is also a Zwilling Pro made by Henckels, and this is a Victorinox. And I'm trying to remember what I paid for these. I think, if I remember correctly, I paid about $120 for this blade. I paid about $80 for this blade, and I think this one was around $40, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on those. These are not my go-to knives at this time, and we're going to talk about that also. The fourth item that you need in your arsenal is a honing steel. I highly recommend a diamond honing steel. You don't have to spend a fortune on these. This, contrary to popular belief, is not a knife sharpener. This is a tool that you use to keep a sharp knife sharp, and we're going to talk about that a little further along in the video when I do talk about sharpening your knives. These are two knives that I like to call auxiliary knives that a lot of people like to have, and I'm not excluded from that group. I like to have these as well. You want a serrated bread knife maybe, and a slicing knife for slicing, for carving meat. And these, once again, are from my first knives when I decided I wanted to have specific knives for specific tasks. When it comes down to the chef's knife, some people prefer a traditional chef's knife. Some people prefer these Santokus, which is purely preference. And these come in various sizes as well. Your chef's knife, my favorite is the 8-inch blade. These are available usually in 6-inch blades and 10-inch blades as well. And the Santoku is sort of an Asian style of a chef's knife, but not quite. So we're going to have a look at the difference between Asian and Western knives now, because that's going to help you understand what my knife choices are and why. Now I want to show you some differences in the chef's knives. This Hinkle's or Zwilling is what's called a Western style knife, and the Shun and the Miyabi are Asian style knives. The Asian style knives also, they're typically beautiful. There's very few of these that are made that are good quality knives that aren't just beautiful at the same time, so that's kind of a bonus. But there's a difference in the blade geometry between the Western style knives and the Asian style knives, and over time, you know, like I said, I started with this guy, but after I got my hands on some Asian knives, it didn't take me long to figure out that this is my preference. And the reason I like the Asian knives better is this blade geometry. This may be a little difficult to see here, but maybe not. The Western blade, the Zwilling Pro, is on top, and my Miyabi is on the bottom. The spine is thinner. This Asian blade is a thinner profile blade, and this Western blade, the Zwilling, is a lot thicker. The thickness of the blade makes a good bit of difference in how well the knife cuts. The edge geometry on these two knives is different also, and we're going to talk about that once again when we get to the section about sharpening. But these Asian style blades are thinner, and they're much easier to push through something like an onion or a carrot or something like that. They just make chopping a lot easier. You have to use a little bit different technique with these knives, but other than that, the cutting action on the Asian knives is just absolutely amazing. I'm also going to try to show you some of the difference in the blade geometry. I don't know how well this is going to show up on video, but the Zwilling Pro on the right is just a lot thicker blade than the Miyabi on the left, and this is one of the reasons I feel that the Asian knives just cut a lot better. So what I'm trying to show here is kind of the difference in the geometry of the knife of an Asian knife and a Western knife. And this is not drawn to scale, but I'm trying to describe why I feel the Asian style knives cut better. This makes it a lot easier coming through thick, coarse material than something like this. So, in review at this point, you've got a couple of decisions to make. The first decision is, which knives do you want? If you want a set, pick out the set you want and buy it. If you want to buy higher quality and buy individual knives, pick the style or pick the brand out that you want and then buy it. The other decision is, you'll want to decide whether you want Western style knives or the Asian style knives. And my best suggestion on that is to go to somewhere that sells these and feel them. Put them in your hand and see what you think. This chef's knife is the one that really matters. When people tell you you need to get a knife that feels good in your hand, they're talking specifically about this knife. The paring knife, the boning filet knife, they don't really have to feel that good in your hand, because you're not going to be spending extensive amounts of time with that knife in your hand like you will these two. You want these to feel good, so these are the knives you need to focus on. So pay close attention to that. Decide which style you want, which blade you want, and then get some of them in your hand, and we're going to go from there. So now let's talk about how to maintain these blades once you have them. Okay, when we're talking about sharp, we have our blade edge. And when you have a perfectly sharp blade, this comes to a nice point. And as you use your knife against the cutting board or whatever else you're going to use it against, one of the things that happens is this blade will develop a little bend, which makes it makes the knife dull. I don't know the exact terminology that bladesmiths use for this, but what happens is the knife loses the geometry of its edge. It'll have a little bit more pushed over one side than the other. It'll turn that. And this is where your sharpening steel, there I go, I called it a sharpening steel. This is a honing steel. This is where this comes into play. This tool is designed to reshape the edge. And what I typically like to do is every time I get a knife out, and I've got an old beater knife here that is very dull, just to demonstrate this, you just take your steel and you get it about the same angle as your blade, and you hit it 2 or 3 times on each side, and that realigns the edge here and keeps a sharp knife sharp. Like I said, that honing steel is not a sharpener, and it's not something you want to use to sharpen a knife. It won't sharpen a knife that's dull. So what I want to talk about here now is a little bit about the geometry of these blades and how we're going to sharpen these. Typically, your Asian style kitchen knives have roughly a 15-degree bevel on that edge. And the Western style knives may have a 15-degree, but a lot of them have a 20-degree. And there's some trade-offs that you get with these different sizes or these different angles. So we'll take a brief look at that here. Here's just another poor quality visual that I've thrown together to help demonstrate this point. Some of your Asian knives will have a 10-degree bevel. A lot of them have a 15-degree bevel. Some of your Western knives will have a 15-degree bevel, and a lot of them will have a 20-degree bevel on the cutting edge. Now, the trade-offs here are this 10-degree and 15-degree bevel, they cut better. They do a better job of cutting. They feel sharper, and you can just feel this when you're cutting, like I said, things like root vegetables. The advantage up here on the 20-degree bevel is this guy will hold its edge a lot better than this guy over here. So the 10-degree bevels require more maintenance. The 20-degree bevels, they last longer. They stay sharp longer. They hold that edge better. If you decide to buy high quality knives or higher quality knives than you're used to having, you're going to be faced with a couple of choices when it comes to sharpening those knives. You can buy sharpening stones and learn to use sharpening stones and sharpen manually. You can buy an electric sharpener like this, or there's a couple of other really high-end sharpening systems you can buy that I'll show you at the end of this video. This particular sharpener from Chef's Choice is one that I like, and this is an older model. I've had this one for quite some time. There's a newer model of this same thing, but this is called the Trizor Edge XV, and the XV means 15. This guy is set up to handle blades that are 15-degree edge bevels, or it will take a knife like a 20-degree or a 10-degree and turn it into a 15-degree bevel for you. And I think 15 degrees for kitchen knives is pretty good. I'm happy with those. It's got 3 stages. It's got a coarse, a medium, and a fine. So most of the time, when I want to put one of my blades in here, my blades are not going to be extremely dull or damaged. I don't even use the coarse. I do several swipes on the medium and then go to the fine. And like I said, I've got this beater knife here that I've dulled intentionally. I've rubbed the edge of this guy up against metal to where it won't cut anything. But we're going to sharpen this knife right here. I'm going to turn this on and we're going to run it on both sides. We're going to run through the coarse, the medium, and the fine, and I'll show you how sharp this knife will get. So you just turn this on and it guides your blade for you. You just pull it through. You're going to give it about 4 pulls through each slot. And we'll give this one more for good measure, because I've never actually run this one through the 15-degree sharpener. And then we're going to move over to the medium. And you can tell a difference in the way it sounds. We're going to go 4 strokes here as well on each side of the blade. And then we're going to go to the fine. and go forward with that one as well. And then just one more pull. And then let me demonstrate to you how sharp that made this blade. So this blade should easily cut this paper now. It does. It makes a very sharp edge. So the 15-degree electric sharpener does a great job. One of the things I also like about this sharpener is I often will use this instead of this. When I pick up a knife, I'll have this guy set up somewhere that I can easily access it. I'll turn it on and I will pull one pull on each side through this fine stone over here and get the same or a better benefit than using my honing steel. If you want something that's a little more refined than that Chef's Choice Trizor system, you can have a look at this Work Sharp Ken Onion model. This thing's really nice. I just recently got this one, and this one gives you some flexibility. Up here you can set the dial for whatever angle you want to have on your bevel, and it goes anywhere in 1 degree increments between 15 and 30 degrees. For kitchen knives, I like I said, I like to work everything at 15 degrees. That just works best for me. I'm happy with the edge retention that I get on that. But for my pocket knives and things that I use every day, I'm running those guys at a 25 degree because they can still be nice and sharp, but I get better edge retention on the pocket knife. And you know, those guys take a beating, especially cutting open cardboard boxes and things like that. So a sharpener like this gives you a lot of that flexibility. This guy has belts that are changeable, and it comes with 5 different coarseness of belts that you can change off on this thing, and it just works really well. I've been playing with this one, and I've only sharpened a handful of knives on this so far, but I am extremely happy with the results that I get on this unit. For the really hardcore knife enthusiast where nothing but absolute precision will do, you can get a system like this Wicked Edge. This guy holds the knife, and it's got these guide rods that have these diamond stones that you work. And these guys, the angle you calibrate down here, there's angle guides on these, but if you want really precision, we have a digital angle guide that you can put right on the stone and calibrate the exact angle that you have to work on that blade. And this particular system allows you to work on both sides of the blade at the same time, and it just works like this. You just set up your angle and get your stones where you want them, the grit you want, and you work the blade just like that. But you progress from coarse to fine, and you can do some really super precision sharpening on a system like this. But I don't think the average home knife sharpener enthusiast is going to go to this extreme, but this extreme is available. And last but not least, if you don't want to sharpen your own knives, there are plenty of sharpening services available to you. Some places where you buy your knives, I think Sur La Table may do on-site knife sharpening. That's also a good place to go, where you can get them in your hands and feel how the knives feel in your hands. But there are online sharpening services where you can mail your knives in and get them professionally sharpened at very reasonable rates. I've never used one, but I had to look online and saw several where you could send in up to 4 knives, and for $50 or $60 you'll get a professional sharpening job, and they'll send your knives back to you. And I think they had a turnaround time of a week, which is not bad. So The one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't matter what knife you have. If you've got a $10 knife or a $1,000 knife, if it's dull, it's no good. So being able to sharpen it yourself or being able to get it sharpened is important. You're going to want to do that. Another thing about maintaining your knives and keeping your knives in good shape is never ever use your knife against a surface that's not designed to use a knife against. I like these edge grain cutting boards. My knives do extremely well on those, and I highly recommend it. Plastic cutting boards are okay, but I get my best results using these edge grain cutting boards. So I hope I've covered a lot of things about knives. I'm not going to do full demos of all these knife sharpeners because it's boring to me. You can go on YouTube and find all kinds of video demos on these knife sharpeners. I've got the 3 systems that I use there. I have another system that I didn't show you. It's a little bit lesser version of the Wicked Edge. It's a system called the Edge Pro Apex, and it works similarly to the Wicked Edge, but you're only working on one side of the blade at a time. Instead of working on both sides of the blade. It's a little less expensive than the Wicked Edge, but it sharpens just as well as the Wicked Edge, and it's a little less money. So don't be afraid of sharpening knives. Like I said, that chef's choice Trizor that I have no problem running my kitchen knives through that. I use that to sharpen my Schuns and my Henckels, or my Henckels and Zwilling Pro knives and stuff like this. I've got absolutely no problem on some of my more expensive blades, just because I'm a little anal retentive about it. I run those on that Wicked Edge, and I also use the Wicked Edge on my pocket knives because I like to do some specific things with those. So if you have any questions, leave a comment on the video and I'll try to answer the questions for you. But get some good knives and learn how to take care of them and be happy with what you've got, because they're what's doing all the work when you're prepping your food. Until next time, this is John Setzler with Man Cave Meals.